Welcome to another exciting edition. That's right, the pre-Christmas edition of American Warrior Radio, the place to be for news, notes, interviews, and current events for all issues military and veteran related. If you or someone you know has ever worn the uniform of the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, or National Guard or Reserves, you've come to the right place. American Warrior Radio, right here on the Talk to Me station, AM 1300 WMEL, sponsored as always by AVET Project. Folks, this program is all about supporting our troops and their families, both past and present. So please get comfortable, grab a cup of coffee, maybe a pencil or paper to jot down a note or two, because we're always efforting to bring you important information that you can use and share with others. With that said, let's roll down the runway and get this show off the ground. As you all know, my name is Garen Cohn. I'm an Air Force veteran, a retired legal advocate for veterans, and founder of AVET Project, but I never fly through the airwaves alone.
Good morning. I'm Glenn McGuffey, manager of your Brevard County Veteran Service Team. We want to wish you a Merry Christmas, so we don't forget to do that.
That's right. Merry Christmas, everybody.
In the heat of doing the program, we find sometimes it goes so fast that we're
Sure
jammed
does.
up at the end. It is a great day here. We've got a great program for you as always. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Garen. I think we've got some things you want to say, and we've got a super great guest for you today.
That's right. You don't want to miss even a minute of this episode of American Warrior Radio. I wanted to start by letting everybody know, like Glenn, Merry Christmas, everyone. You know, AVET Project, in concert with DJ Gene Marine and his karaoke machine, have done a number of parades, about 5 here on the Space Coast, celebrating the season and reminding everyone along the parade routes that we're able to enjoy these freedoms and this liberty because of the service and sacrifice of our past and present war fighters, those that are presently serving over in Afghanistan and have served in Iraq, all the way back to Vietnam, Korea, even World War II. We thank you all so much for your sacrifice and dedication to this awesome country we live in. Couldn't do it without you. As we went through the parade routes, we saw literally tens of thousands of people. We handed out thousands of toys to the kids, had music, and we spent the entire time focused on making sure the residents of the Space Coast are fully aware to support our troops in everything we do, because without them, we're nothing, Glenn.
That's right, and you guys deserve a great vote of thanks here because you're a little too modest. Just I participated in 5 parades. I know you guys worked your tails off at the Toys for Tots and other activities supporting the troops, and most importantly, or very importantly, I should say, the families of the troops here, and that's a first for a program I think that I know of, specifically targeting the families and getting them toys for the children and other support during the holiday season, and that just blows me away. And let's hear it for AVET, folks.
Well, we'll take those kudos, because it is, look, this year, more than any other year we've been doing this, the demand has been so incredible for families that need help with toys for their kids. We've supported, I couldn't tell you how many squadrons through the Air Force Base, the Coast Guard, both National Guard units. We've done everything we can for the active and Guard units. And as you mentioned, throughout the community, we've helped out. I totally lost track of how many families, but it brings to mind, and I'm going to make this appeal right at the top of the program. We need your help. We cannot do this alone, and together, as our executive director Kim always says, together we can help more. Folks, please, if you've never done it, it's easy. Jump online, avetproject.org, Alpha Victor Echo Tango Project.org. Click on the donate button. If it's $1, if it's $5, if it's $50 or $500, it's going to be very welcome, and it's going to go directly to our programs and services of support for past and present military members and their families. We're an all-volunteer 501c3. Nobody's getting a paycheck. Everything that comes in is going in direct support of our mission and our programs and services. So please, jump online, avetproject.org, click on the donate button. If you're in Montana, if you're in Maine, if you're in Texas, and you're listening to this, please, just jump on, just donate what you can. For those of you that are watching, that's right, watching this episode of American Warrior Radio on YouTube, folks, anybody can go online. They're all videotaped and up online on YouTube. You'll notice that I'm not in my usual AVET attire, nor is Glenn, because we've been working, helping out the families at this Christmas season. Just parked the box truck after loading up and unloading, I don't know how many times already this morning. The demand is incredible, and we need your help. Please, just jump online, avetproject.org, click the donate button. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's the Christmas season. I know times are tough. We're dealing with it. We see it every day. But you all can help. Regardless of what the denomination is, please help out. You mentioned we have a great guest.
Absolutely. So I'm going to leave the introductions to you, and we'll jump right in.
Well, we are very fortunate to have we've had his nephew, Dr. Lance Armstrong, who's a very involved volunteer in the military and veterans community here. We are so pleased to have Lance Armstrong's uncle, Dr. Charles Armstrong, with us today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Garen. Appreciate it. My pleasure.
Well, and Merry Christmas to you and yours also. Okay. We wanted you to come in because you got so much to share about your experience, both personally, professionally, and in the military. But give us a little thumbnail sketch, some personal biographical information first. Where were you born? Where did you go to school for your MD? What made you want to become a medical doctor?
Well, I was born in Springfield, Missouri. Lived there till I was 10. Then we moved to Bethesda, where I spent my teen years. Then I went to the Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut for my BA. Then to the University of Missouri School of Medicine for my MD. And then did an internship in St. Louis. And
this is all before you went in the military?
That's right. Then I did a residency at UCal Davis after the military. But in the spring of 1968, every male intern, MD intern in America, received a note from the Pentagon, welcome to the Vietnam Transient Detachment. That was
whether you liked it or not, huh?
Well, not only that, the fellows who had signed up for Navy and Air Force programs were also notified, sorry, that was a mistake, you're in the Army now.
That's a government operation.
The Army needed doctors in Vietnam, needed us yesterday. So we reported in August of '68 to the post in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm not used to this.
Hey, it's just a conversation. Yeah. Fort Sam Houston, AVET Project, and Soldier Heart performed there.
Yes. And then a few of us were given the option of becoming flight surgeons. So I headed to Fort Rucker.
As an Army?
That's right.
As an Army officer,
yeah.
Okay.
To do some flight training. For us, that really meant training to take care of especially eye, ears, nose, and throat problems of the helicopter pilots and reconnaissance plane pilots in Vietnam.
So they already knew that they had a demand in that area, and they were going to train you in that. Okay.
That's right, yes. And then about 6 days after Richard Nixon was elected president, we headed from San Francisco on over to Vietnam. They did not need flight surgeons when I arrived. So I was assigned to the 91st Evacuation Hospital up on the coast about halfway between Da Nang and Nha Trang, where I spent about the first half of my tour. And at the 91st Evac, we specialized in injuries to extremities, to the arms and legs. So I needed a bit of training. I had done plenty of surgery during my training, but none of that type. No violent injuries to the extremities. I mean, I did not do my training at Cook County Hospital, Chicago. I was in a more pleasant atmosphere in downtown St. Louis, so we had standard surgery to do there.
So you were kind of thrown right into the fire when you got on the ground in Vietnam.
Right, and the surgeon doctors there were very good to put me through a little training course, and then I was able to assist them for about half a year until I got reassigned.
Was that like a year tour for you?
We all were there 365 days. Now, many of the married interns were given an option. You can go to Vietnam for 1 year, come back to a post, in the United States for a year, or you can go to Europe for 3 years. So some of them were given that option.
So you either went right into the fire.
We single ones, without families, were not given that option.
You were going to Vietnam whether you liked it or not.
Yeah. In fact, the residents there at St. Louis, in St. Louis, where I was an intern, used to say, "Charlie, we know where you're going." So we all saw it coming.
So about how many people a day were coming through that medical facility in Vietnam that you were at?
With the 91st.
An average of about 5 Americans and 1 Vietnamese.
Okay.
Every day, and they'd have wounds varying from legs needing to be amputated to stitched back up and get them on the battlefield.
That's
what kind
right. Well, most of them were a little too bad off to be sent back. After we finished with them, they generally went either to Tokyo or back to San Francisco.
And how would you, well, I just wondered, do you have a thought about comparing battlefield medicine, so to speak, in the Vietnam War versus battlefield medicine in Iraq and Afghanistan?
I'm not qualified, no. I'm not qualified to answer that.
Okay.
But you did mention that when you were doing your training and what have you in Chicago and St. Louis, very controlled conditions, everything was, an entirely different pace than being over there in what was essentially, like a MASH unit, right?
Well, that's right. We had some emergency surgery in my internship and residency, but not of this type. Most of our emergencies had to do with chest and abdominal wounds.
What was it like for you to be on the ground there and find these predominantly very young men coming in with these injuries that were going to change their life forever? That had to have had impact on your mental state too, right?
Very much so. And by 68 and 9, it was already clear to all of us that part of the craziness of this experience was that the war should have been over with by, say, summer of 65 at the latest, if it had been handled properly.
And this is, again, Vietnam was supposed to be a learning experience for us.
Yeah, exactly. It was a learning experience, all right.
But we didn't learn the lessons.
We didn't learn the lessons, and we didn't learn the lessons in Vietnam. I mean, it went on way too long.
Well, no, we already knew the lessons.
Yeah.
We learned that in Korea when we could have won that war. But
again, we're asking our troops to conduct their missions with their hands, these rules of engagement with their hands tied behind their backs. It just is insane.
Yes. My father was in Congress during the Korean War, and
the United States Congress.
Yes.
Cool.
He became fed up with the conduct of the Korean War, so he took off his Easter vacation in 1951 and flew to Tokyo to confer with General MacArthur about a plan to win the war. While my father was there, MacArthur was fired, so that was the end of the plan to win the war. And MacArthur was fired, I think, predominantly because he had written a letter to Minority Leader Martin of Massachusetts outlining his plan after discussing this with my father. But that was the end of it, and we went ahead and did a stalemate. If we'd won that war, we would not be having these problems in the Far East. So we already knew the lessons. And everybody speculates about whether there were sinister motives on the part of President Johnson and his Secretary of Defense McNamara. Who knows? But in any case, it was either gross incompetence or ignorance or some
combination of both.
Both or something.
Something far more
attitude.
dark than that.
But the point is, I'm making, we already knew the lessons. The military over there knew it. I got into some trouble by writing an essay and sending it to my hometown newspaper about this subject.
But you were over there firsthand seeing the life-changing mess this war was creating.
That's right, and the point is that hurt our morale because we knew that it was unnecessary by then. I'm glad I was there in 68 and 69 and not later when the morale was getting even worse.
And Glenn, you're a Vietnam vet. You share those sentiments?
Oh, absolutely. And you talk about things that were bad for morale, and one that was bad for morale amongst the group of people that I came into contact with was the White House trying to run the war from the White House when they had no idea of how to fight a war. They were fighting it on a political basis, as far as we were concerned, more than a military basis. And like you said earlier, fighting it with one arm or sometimes both arms tied behind your back, and it just was crazy. You know, we could have won that war anytime we wanted to get serious about it.
I believe during the mid-60s, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was an Army general, coincidentally named Johnson, if I'm not mistaken. He said the most shameful day of his life was when he got into his car to drive over to the White House to resign over this, and then lost his nerve and did not resign. He later regretted that very much.
Interesting.
And, yes.
Now, going back to the essay you wrote for your hometown newspaper, they evidently published it, yes?
They did.
And then the Pentagon
Well,
DOD
my dad took out, my father was a journalist after, in combination with his political career. He took out some of the more inflammatory statements. And then he knew
watered it, edited it a bit.
But he put it in a little bit abbreviated, but still somebody at the Pentagon read it and sent over to my colonel to call me in. The colonel called me in, and he said, I don't think they taught you fellas enough there at Sam Houston, did they, Captain? And I said, well, sir, as you know, 6 weeks is not enough to learn that much about the Army. He said, well, this is a no-no. You're not supposed to comment on the conduct of the war as a soldier. And I said, I understand, sir. He was mainly checking on my attitude.
Sure.
So,
but regardless of your political beliefs or your sentiments towards the war, it didn't impact your ability to serve the country and help these guys out.
No.
Obviously.
No.
Can you go back, and again, I don't want to, if I'm touching on a raw nerve, just tell me, but can you go back and tell me just one of the darkest days you had there, and then maybe one of the best days other than the day you left to come back stateside?
Well, 2 of the darkest days, one was when I got my assignment after 6 months at the 91st Evac to become a flight surgeon and go down to the Mekong Delta. And the reason I did not
This is when you transferred from one base to another.
Well, they finally found that they needed a flight surgeon. I'd been trained as a flight surgeon. But I had bonded with my gang there at the 91st Evac.
Sure.
And I didn't want to leave them. And it was a sort of an combination of loyalty and emotional bonding, where you feel secure with your, troops talk about this all the time. They want to get back and be with their people.
You bet.
And their unit.
Everybody has each other's back. Yeah.
So I was very unhappy about this assignment, but it was a totally different experience. And in retrospect, I'm sort of glad I did it, although I missed my friends there at the 91st Evac. I went down to the 164th Aviation Group, but it was not. This is about 12 miles outside of Shantou, down in the Delta. But it was also an artillery battalion, and there were infantry troops there, and a big, I don't know if it's a battalion or larger of engineers.
Right.
So we were doing all sorts of medicine and surgery there. And about 6 days after I arrived, we had our first invasion of that compound, where the communist troops sappered most of our aircraft, and we were up all night wondering whether we were going to, how bad it was going to be. Whether
be overrun or not?
Personally, yeah,
right.
That's right. How much time do I have? The sergeant there, the sirens went off about midnight. I had decided not to stay up and listen to the Super Bowl between the New York Jets and the Baltimore Colts, because everybody knew that the Baltimore Colts were
going to clean clock,
of course.
It was the 3rd Super Bowl, and everybody knew the Jets didn't have any chance.
Oh, my.
The Jets. So I went to bed. The sirens went off. It was total, absolute darkness. And Sergeant Ladd came in. He said, Captain Armstrong, if you'll stand up, please, I'll put on your flight jacket. I couldn't see him. All I could do was hear him. And so I stood. He said, put your arms up. And he put this on me. He said, here's your helmet. He put that on me. And then he said, now, if you need it, I'll give you your rifle. I didn't know I had a rifle. I didn't know I owned a rifle. The instructions were keep these arms out of the hands of these doctors so nobody gets hurt.
Right.
And but he said, if you need it, I'll give it to you. And we had 2 days of training in gunnery at Fort Sam Houston.
Wow.
So anyway, I know that one of the instructor sergeants began that day by saying, now, gentlemen, called all the doctor new recruits, gentlemen. Now, gentlemen, if we will listen very carefully today, perhaps we can refrain from shooting each other in the head. Anyway, it was a long night, and we made it through. But that was
one of the dark
a
days.
little bit of anxiety.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. We had 2 episodes like that. But it was an interesting experience down in the Delta. But like everyone else, on the 365th day, I was glad to board that airplane.
Yeah, so that was probably the brightest day of your experience, is getting on the plane coming back home.
Well, by then everybody felt that way.
Well,
And,
of course.
So.
Well, we thank you so much for your service, and I know you're straining your vocal cords to join us here today. So I don't want to hold you over. If you're welcome to stay.
Is there any questions?
Well, you're welcome to stay. Glenn, you got anything else? We still got a minute till the break.
No, I just really appreciate your service
My pleasure.
and appreciate you sharing with us the details of your service, particularly in Vietnam. Brings back some memories, some good, some not so good, but memories nonetheless. And you know, the military is a fraternity, and I understand that bonding you were talking about with the 91st unit that you were with, and you know, that's why there's so many military reunions, I think. Is,
right.
is that
Yep.
bonding continues on for a lifetime.
Indeed.
And folks, I want you to understand, Dr. Armstrong has agreed to come back with his nephew, Dr. Lance Armstrong, a chiropractor that's so good here in the community. We'll have them both together on a future episode of American Warrior Radio. But don't go anywhere. We're not done yet, all right?
Yeah.
We're going to have a little short break here. Come back and join us on American Warrior Radio right here on the Talk to Me station, AM 1300 WMEL. Be back in a flash.